Welcome back to the Mindful Politics podcast. So today I am with Annie and Winnie, two of my colleagues that I respect for they are coaches and they work with people on personal development and transformation. And we've never talked about politics before. So this is going to be interesting to hear their stories and their perspectives on politics. I just respect them for their perspectives on humanity and personal growth. And now I think we'll enjoy this conversation about mindful politics as well. So, welcome to the both of you. Nice to have you here. Yeah.
Thank you so
So,
much for having me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for saying yes to this because I think with my invitation to both of you, at first, I think both of you said, and this is why I'm glad that we're here together in this trio, because I think both of you said, yeah, politics is not something that I love talking about, and I'm not sure that I should be in this conversation. And I said, no, that's exactly why, we should be in this conversation because um, I, I don't know. I think most people in my circle uh, don't love talking politics because I have such nice people in my circle, and nobody wants to ruffle feathers, right? But that's but yet we have elections and there are ballots that come to us and we have friends and family who are who feel strongly about certain things and inevitably at some point we have uh, either the opportunity or the requirement to get into some kind of political conversation. So this is why I feel like if we can find a way for each of us to have bring a more mindful way of talking about it, then maybe we would open ourselves up to, a more, well, ultimately a healthier society and one where we can actually engage in social issues in a way that is beneficial to everyone, actually uplifting and moves the knowledge forward, I guess, for all of us on different social issues, and we can then be more thoughtful about how we vote if we choose to vote, or how we have the conversation with others. So that's the point of mindful politics, and uh, every episode, those of you who have heard or watched the previous episodes know that I use a timer and kind of we each have an equal amount of time to talk about our story, etc. And each episode, I also share, one other part of my story or perspective on it, so that it doesn't, I'm not saying the same thing every single time. So hopefully it gets interesting as you listen to this over time. You get to kind of get a sense of what my worldview is as I come to this. So, without further ado, let's get into that segment where we each get to share our story of how did we get here to this moment of how we think about politics. And so I'm really eager to hear your stories. But just to kind of get the conversation going, I'll share a portion of mine. So in previous episodes, I talked about how my my younger years with politics, and then how religion even fits into how my religion fits into politics, etc. So this time I thought what I would talk about, and let me go ahead and set the timer up and get it going. Um, okay, so I'm just gonna give myself 3 minutes. I'll give each of you 4 minutes. So I guess what I will say this time, let me just is I used to care a lot about specific issues. I used to care a lot about, for example, abortion, and climate change and gun rights. And then so those are some of the issues, and basic income was a big one that I cared a lot about. And then I cared about the process of politics overall in terms of voting and sort of like ranked choice voting and kind of gerrymandering and the reformation of how elections are run. Kind of over time, I kind of evolved on these different issues. And then I guess now, really, for the past couple of years, my view about politics has continued to shift, where now what I care about the most is how politics and the political conversation shapes our psyche, like our character, and therefore our relationships with one another. and the ability that we are creating or or dissolving of working together, and the ability to be friendly towards one another and to love one another as neighbors, like the commandment of love each other, as love your neighbor as you love yourself, that kind of thing. And what I find is every time I see a political dialogue, whether it's on YouTube or on a podcast or something, it feels like it's often going in the direction that I don't want to see society go in terms of the ability to love one another, because it's more like the ability to sound smarter than the other person, or the ability to um, uh, be right. There's nothing wrong with the ability to sound smart, the ability to be right. It's the what I lament, I guess, is when that has the effect on the other person of feeling like they are less smart or less moral than you or something like that. And so I hope I'm trying to explore this idea of how can we have the dialogue politically in a way that brings more humility to ourselves, more appreciation for the other, and ultimately more togetherness, so that we can uh, imagine a political conversation that allows us to feel more like friends at the end than we were at the beginning. Like, imagine that. So that's my time is up. And so I'm going to go ahead and give each of you just a minute if you wanted to reflect on anything I said there, or ask any questions or anything like that. So let's see. How about, I don't know, I'll just pick. How about Winnie? Can want to start with you? I'll just give you a minute if you wanted to reflect on that in any way you like.
Yeah, I really loved what you shared there, George. I think it's the word that was coming to me was ego. Doesn't ego get in the way sometimes when when it feels like it's a battle? It's like, well, I think I want to be, I think I'm a bit more morally superior. I know a bit more about this. I'm smarter and you're not, or you can possibly understand. And I think it's like that's what can create the divisiveness. Whereas actually, um, we were to soften and to go, actually, let's really feel into our hearts. What is each side? What is our common goal? Because when we go deep enough, I think we all want the same thing, right? We all want the world to be a better place. We want more equality. We want the same things. So I think there's a piece around like when the conversation gets very inflammatory, it's actually how can we just soften that and
Mm,
actually return to our hearts? Can we find that heart commonality, that heart space? So that's what came up immediately for
yeah,
me. Yeah,
yeah.
in
Thank you
response
for
to what you
that.
said.
Appreciate that very much. Yeah, definitely more to talk about there. Um, Annie, what about you? Any reflections you want to share based on that?
Yes, that definitely resonates with me what both of you said, because I'm coming very much from relationship work. I've come from very several codependent relationships, and I see this pattern playing out in personal relationships, and it's not very different from what happens in the political arena. So I definitely agree that the ego has a huge role to play in how we behave in these kinds of conversations. And there's a lot at stake. And that's why we cannot always let that go. We cannot let the lay down our arms and our weapons so easily. And so I'm very excited to be here to be able to talk about what I've learned in my relationships, and maybe bring that to the table and see how our personal relationships can help us create more productive conversations between cities and nations and leaders.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot at stake, and like we get really obsessed into that, forgetting this. So thank you both. And now I'm really excited to hear each of your stories. Um, well, let's see here. Winnie, why don't we come back to you? And would you like to share, yeah, share how you got here in terms of your political life and thoughts? Yeah.
That sounds very grand. That would imply that I have this whole political like kind of journey, and really I don't. I would say that I've been apolitical pretty much all my life. I think I used to carry a bit of shame around that. It wasn't that I wasn't bothered about politics. It's not that I didn't care. I clearly care, because when I think about certain issues, I have an opinion. I have physical, there are reactions in my body. I do care. I think part of it is a bit of I did in my younger years. It was I didn't want to really speak up and put my head above the parapet. I didn't want to get shot down. There was that divisiveness of like, if you're supporting this political party, then you must be against that one, and that I think we're all familiar with that dynamic, and I didn't want to play a part in that. So there was certainly a lot of just let's just blend in, let's just go with the flow. And also a sense, actually, well, what can I do? I think this was like some of my mentality earlier, like in my early years, was like, well, okay, I can cast a vote, I can kind of say something, but really, can I really make a difference? The majority party is still going to get in power. It's not. I don't really count. I think is kind of where it's been a lot of my background, and it's really interesting actually. I've started paying a lot more attention to politics since the pandemic, since COVID broke out. I think that's where I really started to pay attention to, okay, especially in the UK. This is where I live. I live in the UK, and just really paying attention to what are the government doing? Like, what are they and are they not doing? And just hearing different sides of the story. So I think I would say I pay more attention to it now. More, I think maybe just because my focus is there a little bit more, and I can and I'm also I can see a little bit more of the different sides of what people are trying to do. So that's a little bit of where I come from. So I wouldn't. Where am I? Especially in the UK, like all the political stuff that's been happening, it's like I really do just scratch my head sometimes and go, what are these people doing? So that's where I am in terms of like how I came to be here. I think at my heart, I care about people. I care about fairness and equality and social justice. So for me, it isn't about supporting any particular political party. It's about their policies. Where are they thinking? Are they really caring about the people? Or is it every man for themselves? Like, is it okay for certain parts of society to do well and then others will just turn a blind eye? That bothers me. And I think that we see that across different policies, that different political parties will kind of address those kind of areas in different ways, right? So yeah, I think I'll pause there. That's a little summary of where I'm at the moment, and it's still a journey. I'm exploring. I'm still very much learning. So I come here with humility. I definitely don't have like really strong stances or anything. It's very much I'm still learning and absorbing, and very much wanting to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, let's just give myself and Annie a minute to reflect back on what we heard, and yeah, I really appreciate you showing up and sharing this, because I feel like what you're saying is I don't know. I feel like it's actually the majority opinion, or the majority stance on politics, which is why I felt it was important to voice this. Many people, especially people who are, there are a lot of reasons to be apolitical, but one of them, especially in my circles, is we don't want to offend others or, cause a rift in relationships or something like that. And so, but then, like you said, it's like policies eventually at some point come down to affecting yourself and the people around you, and you're like, oh, okay, there is actually a need to advocate for something, perhaps it's like, this is not right, or something. And so anyway, thank you for being here and sharing where you're at, because I think a lot of people can relate. Yeah. Any reflection on that before we continue?
Yes, I definitely, feel you too about being apolitical. I've been in the closet politically forever, even though I've always hung out with very political people, because I wouldn't want to speak up and get criticized and ruffle feathers. So same here, same story. But when I look at my actions and my decisions, I'm very political. I just wouldn't be outspoken about it. So it's, I've also shared that feeling where maybe what I think doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And so my work around that is that when I saw how my relationships played out in my daily life, I realized, well, if I can become my own partner's enemy and vice versa, how can it be possible then for nations to get along? And what does that mean? That means we have to look at finding peace within. And so that's been my mission ever since, when I realized this is the most healthy political thing I could do, is to work on gaining inner peace and letting that radiate out to others, and hoping that will inspire others to do the same.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to give you the chance now to say more about that, because or any part of your history that you thought would be relevant to bring. So yeah, when you're ready, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with an immigrant family. So my parents came from Vietnam. They immigrated to the US after the Vietnam War. They were looking for a better life. And so my dad is Democrat. My mom is apolitical. She's a very hermit Buddhist who wants to just pray all day. My dad is totally atheist. And so I kind of just watched him watch the news every single day growing up. I didn't really take part in it until much later in high school, when I hung out with anarchists. And so I've hung out with anarchists ever since. I've always found myself in circles with anarchists. Even though I've never identified with them fully, I'm also someone who avoids labeling myself and putting myself into a box. And it's very much about the ideas that are motivating our actions that interest me the most. So same as Winnie, are we looking at equality? Are we thinking about everyone, including the most vulnerable and marginalized people? Are we thinking about nature and the environment? Those are what is the most important to me. And whoever stands for those, I'll vote for them, and hoping that they can introduce more of that kind of mindset into our daily lives. And in the meantime, well, my personal relationships have taught me so much about being the victim and a perpetrator. So I've been hinting at it since the beginning. I think it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is that it's so easy to blame the other person and to think that they're in the wrong and we're in the right. And when my husband and I, we untangled our codependent relationship, we realized there was so much pain and trauma that was motivating our hurtful behavior. And it became easy to unconsciously and consciously want to control and dominate the other person. And as much as we did our inner work, as we healed from within, we saw how that impacted our relationship, and the trust and the intimacy and the safety that was created within us and then within the relationship, then created this beautiful kind of utopia, even a little government, if we could say, or a little refuge between us. And then it radiate out to our other relationships and our families and our friendships. So when I saw that happening, we were able to transform our toxic relationship into a healthy and fulfilling one. At one point, there were so many times I thought it would never be possible to save the marriage, because there was so much hatred, I would say, frankly, that I thought, how could I be in love with this enemy? And how could this person consider me their enemy? And what does that mean when we apply that to nations? If I can create this much war in my own household, what does that mean for our countries and for people who don't even know each other, who are neighbors, and they don't take the time to even speak to each other. How can we expect the world to be a peaceful place then if we don't look within first and do that work to find the safety within? Because once we do that, once we find the safety within, then we can afford to lower our weapons and empathize with someone who has vastly different beliefs than us.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll do my 1-minute reflection, and then Winnie would invite you as well. Yeah, I got goosebumps when you said this, because yes, it's like that quote. Maybe it's from Lao Tzu, where it's like, if there's peace, have you heard this one? If there's peace in the household, then there's peace in the community. If there's peace in the community, then there's peace in the state. The peace in the state. So it's kind of like this radiating out, and it's like, but yes, it starts. Well, even the peace in the household starts with peace, in this one person, which then, like you said, radiates. There is this ripple effect that happens when the mindset, the heart set is different or healed, or positive effect on others. And so, yeah, it's so powerful. It's like, yeah, of course we care about these social issues, and also how we go about advocating for that or making the changes itself. The means itself is perhaps more important than the ends, because the ends, look what happens. I mean, US and so many countries are so divided now. So thank you for bringing that forward. That's a powerful reflection. So Winnie, anything you want to bring forward on this?
Yeah, I think there was some really powerful reflections there. And what I hear is it begins with the individual, right? It's the micro, it's the shifts that happen into the micro that have a ripple effect out into the macro, right? Into the wider world. And actually how powerful it is to each be tending to ourselves first, like to finding that inner peace, which then creates more space for us to hear each other. So when there's like that, when we have those conflicting conversations, actually we can, if we've done out the work ourselves, and we can really reach that inner peace, that it just naturally has the ripple effect of we can now hear each other, and then the cohesion, that cohesiveness is better facilitated because there's this shift that's happened in the micro first. So yeah, I really love that. I think this is it, isn't it? Isn't this the spark from which?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Okay, well, let's keep going on this theme, or so the way I want to frame this next segment is, I do want to give us that same kind of format again, where each of us gets 4 minutes, and then we can reflect on each other's input. And I guess I'll give you 2 prompts. You could choose whichever one you like. One is, you can continue on the kind of the train of thought that you're already on right now, and expand on that, especially as regards to your own experience, talking with other people, talking politics with others. The other prompt is a new one. I'm going to start asking more of my guests is, how might your work, your expertise, the thing you do for your work, both of you are, transformational mentors, coaches of one kind or another. What can we learn from what you work with clients on, and to have better conversations with our family and friends and colleagues around politics? So I'll start as usual. I'll give myself 4 minutes this time. All right. So I guess I'll take that second prompt, because my work is in marketing, right? That's what I talk about most of the time in my day-to-day life. And I was like, how can marketing be beneficial to this conversation? And the way I talk about marketing is like, well, I mean, we could talk about how advertising and politics has some major issues. It can really affect elections, obviously, because whoever spends the most money usually, not always, but often wins the election. Whatever policy or politician has the biggest advertising budget kind of like brainwashes the public and tends to win their side of it. But I want to talk about sort of what I usually authentic marketing, and I talk about how authentic marketing is the process of a business finding its calling by this kind of Venn diagram I was bringing, like they're practicing articulating their experiences and their skills and their talents, and on the other side they're practicing kind of sensing into what is the market's wants, or what's the market really responding to. And so applying that to politics and the political conversation, I feel like we can't really grow as a society working well together unless every citizen practices articulating what their values are and their experiences, and therefore how that might inform policies. So for example, like on the abortion topic, like if it was all men who are legislating what abortion is about, it's like, there's something not quite right here. It's like, men, do you have to get abortions? I haven't met a man who's gotten an abortion yet. So it's like, women have to speak. This is a very basic issue. Like, women have to speak up, otherwise it's all. So it's like, all of us, there are policies that affect us probably a lot more than we realize. And it's like, if we don't practice articulating our experiences and our values, how can there's no voice to contribute to the society, and we become marginalized in essence if we don't speak up. And on the other hand, it's like this Venn diagram of seeing what the market wants, right, or what the society wants. Like, yes, we learn to articulate our values and our experiences, but we also must learn to listen to what society's direction right now. We got to understand there's these trends that are happening, and what's the sweet spot between what we care about, sort of the issues and the values we care about, and the trends that are going in a certain direction. Because if we can focus more on those issues or those trends, then our voice is more likely to be heard. So for example, one thing I care a lot about is my dog and what's happening, like, and can I take my dog to these parks and whatever. But if my city and my community isn't really working on that right now, then my voice is just like, my city instead is working on the homeless issue. So what do I think about the homeless issue? And if I contribute to that, that's going to be much more likely to move that issue forward, because that's what the society or the community is focused on at this time. So that's kind of how I think about it. And it's like, okay, articulation within community perhaps is how we can continue moving forward in this. So anyway, that's my take on how my day-to-day can maybe apply to this. So if either of you, both of you, optionally want to add something, any of you want to say anything about that?
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, Annie, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you that speaking up is important. I'm an EFT tapping practitioner, and I help people set boundaries and speak their truth. So this is what we do in our daily lives, and it is very much about representing what we've experienced. Because one of the reasons why I came to this conversation was, there's this occasion, this opportunity to share my perspective, and something that I usually don't do at all. And it's a very unique perspective because I am a very solitary kind of hermit. I'm very philosophical. I've unique life experiences just like anyone else. So I think that there's important things that everyone needs to share, like you're teaching, George, in your business courses. I mean, we all have wisdom to share with the world that could really uplift the state of things.
Yeah, thank you for that. Winnie, I'll give you a chance too if you wanted to reflect on that in any way.
Yeah, what was coming to me was every voice matters. So actually, you know, some when we get caught up in, well, actually, does my voice really matter? Like, can I really make a difference? Actually, it's the totality, it's the culmination of every voice, every person believing, well, my perspective matters, and therefore we each contribute to that. Then that's where the tidal wave change comes in. So I think actually, in terms of like what you teach, George, and it's, you know, we're practicing just expressing our voice. It's not that we're having to convince others and kind of superimpose, right? That being that very egoic way of superimposing our opinion on others. No, I'm just expressing my opinion. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it, we can have a conversation, but it's about expressing and allowing each person to express. And that's how we collectively advocate. That's how we collectively create change.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way of putting it. All right. Well, I want to give each of you also that time if you want to either go, well, you could share, continue on any train of thought you like, or talk about how your work might fit into what can we learn from your work in this kind of conversation. So Annie, we'll come back to you and give you a chance to do that. So yeah, anything you'd like to share there? I'll give you 4 minutes.
Sure. I think it's important to bring up the subject of emotional intelligence. So when we get into a conversation that's really delicate, difficult, when things are very much at stake, we can't really realistically expect someone to just lower their ego and empathize unless they're in the relaxation response. So EFT is all about, the studies behind EFT is that as we're tapping on acupuncture points, we're lowering our cortisol levels, our stress levels right then and there. And so it is the fastest way I know how to lower stress. And I use this to help my clients with people-pleasing habits and, learning how to speak their truth. When it's the most difficult, when everything is at stake, you feel like you're going to get rejected, abandoned, criticized. Part of you feels like you're going to die even, that's the survival mode that's getting triggered right then and there. And so I always tell people tap right then and there, tap on the acupuncture points, lower those cortisol levels. And that's, getting us out of the amygdala, the survival mode. That's part of the fight or flight reaction. When that is triggered, we are shutting off the prefrontal cortex of our brain, where we find empathy, where we find emotional regulation of our emotions, creative thinking, rational thinking. That's why when we're in an argument with someone or in a really heated discussion, we tend to say things or do things that are disrespectful. We're so busy defending our well-being, our survival, our ego, whatever it is. And those are very valid biological reactions to perceived or real threats. So how do we get to that point where we go into the relaxation response so that we can access that empathy and understand each other and collaborate and find that sweet spot that you're talking about, George, where we can start to cooperate and find solutions together? Well, that's why I'm always about the inner work, is that before you do anything, you have to find that safety within, because if you don't do that, there will be no way you will find empathy. I mean, unless something really horrible happens, sometimes that wakes people up. I don't wish that for anyone, but sometimes we need a wake-up call to realize, oh, there's a lot more going on than just little old me. And I have to stay open to other perspectives, because if I want the well-being of my community, even if it's just 2 people or 10 people or a whole city or nations, well, I have to start thinking how interconnected we are. And so for me, it all starts again, with, where's the safety? It's not in something outside of us, because once we go down that route, then we find, it's a dead end. If we go all the way down that route towards finding safety within status, money, appearance, resources, when we amplify that on a nation level, that's what's happening politically. There are political leaders who are too busy worrying about preserving their resources or their ideals, their beliefs, because it offers them the safety that they cannot find within. So how do we do that? You know, how do we, let's you know, teach some emotional intelligence to political leaders. Let's put people who are emotionally regulated into positions of power. That's what I'd like to see.
That's great. Thank you for that. I'm gonna just reflect a little bit on this. It's so interesting to me that it's taken so many years for this idea of like self-regulation to come to the mainstream. I mean, it's not even barely even in the mainstream, right? Maybe like prior to this, maybe mindfulness started coming into the mainstream. Like, I'm like, all thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years of modern society, and like we don't learn this stuff in school. It's like we learn, sure, it's important to learn language and math and history and all that, but it's like, where's the class on self-regulation and emotional intelligence? Like, isn't that more important for forming a good society? Sure, the other stuff is important too, but it's like, this is where we've gotten ourselves into leadership that's cares only about either, just like you said, you know, their own resources or their issues. And it's like the issue is more important than anything. I got to ram this through, you know, and manipulate people however I can. Wow. So thank you for that, for bringing that perspective forward. And I hope this perspective can be broadcasted to, you know, leaders and educators. Yeah. And Winnie, anything you want to say about, actually, you know, Winnie, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, just you can reflect and then also share your own perspective on things. Yeah. So, okay, go ahead, please.
Sure. Oh, I think there's like there's lots of kind of overlap really in what I want to share, and actually what Anya has shared as well. Like, I think emotional intelligence is key. It's so often overlooked. And when we just come from the head and the ego, it's like we can't connect to the heart, right? And there is no safety. There is no safety when our nervous systems and, you know, we're getting triggered. So I completely agree. It's like we need to find that way, like finding that way of really regulating like our nervous system first, returning to our bodies, like really coming into our bodies, and then being able to speak from that place. I think that's key. That is key. And you know, in the work that I do with my clients, so I help Asian women to step in and be the fullest expression of themselves. But first by like transcending like cultural, parental, societal expectations, all of this like seeming baggage, right? That we acquire, and we think, then we make these stories, we have these beliefs around why we can't really speak our truth, why it's not safe to do so. So in terms of the safety aspect, you know, one of the things I teach my clients is it starts with the body. We need to calm our nervous system. Safety comes within the nervous system first. Before we go and transform any thoughts, any belief change, actually let's find safety in our bodies. And, you know, a really simple way is through the breath. So oftentimes, like, you know, my clients, they'll just freeze, like they can't even speak. Forget whether it's the truth or not the truth. It's like sometimes I can't even speak. It's okay. Let's return to the breath. Let's really calm our nervous system down. Let's fill our lungs, our cells with oxygen, and let go of any stuckness, any of that tension that's out. Let it go. And return to the breath. And then the brain, everything can settle. And then we can think more clearly. It's like we can access like a different part of our intelligence. And from there, it's funny because I find actually just through the simple breath work, sometimes we don't even need to go, oh, let's now do some belief change, because actually that simple action of just like, let's take some breaths, really ground into our bodies, and then that, like some of that kind of that tightness in the head, the brain fog can dissolve, and actually our innate truth, our wisdom can naturally come out, where we're not judging it, We're not judging, is this going to be acceptable? Can I speak my my perspective? And might you reject me? Those thoughts don't really come in, because actually we've reached this place of peace. I think from that place of peace, like that's where some of our own trust could come through. This natural. It's funny, like I make this distinction between, we've got thoughts, do I trust myself, like cognitively? But actually we have this innate trust that's in our bodies. It's like when we free up that tension, we find ourselves just naturally freer to speak and radiate our natural energy. So I feel that can really benefit the conversation we're having today. It's like, can we take some breaths? When perhaps we're afraid of speaking a political perspective, actually, what if I was just to take a few breaths and just to speak it anyway? Because I'm just offering my perspective. I'm not forcing my view on anyone. What if I invited everybody to breathe with me? What if we all got into the same heart resonance by breathing? We're all breathing the same. We breathe and we reach the same kind of frequency together, that heart frequency, and from there we speak. And I feel from there, then the openness, the openness to listen to others, the openness to speak, that's what can emerge through the simple power of breath.
I'll just give each of us a minute to reflect on that. Just want to say, Winnie for president or prime minister. No, I mean, imagine, as you were talking about that, it was like, imagine if a leader leading the political discussion were to bring this kind of perspective in. It's like town hall meetings, political debates, just, like congressional discussions or whatever it may be. It's like, I don't see any of this happening. Well, then again, I don't watch a lot of those, but I don't see, sure, sometimes I will like pray, like I say a prayer in the beginning, but that's where like formality, rather than having to do with one's own state of being. It's like, yes. And of course, since we can't, most of us aren't government leaders. Maybe if there's any government leader listening to this, please let me know. I'm very curious. But yeah, we'll start with ourselves. The next political conversation we have, bring this exercise of breathing. That's amazing. So thank you for demonstrating that too. Yeah. Annie, anything you want to reflect on briefly before we move on?
Yes, I think it demands a lot of courage to do this work that a lot of people might not be ready for, because it demands that we be present with all of these difficult emotions that we may have underneath the surface. And so I'd love to see this kind of breathing exercise before any heated discussion or any important solution, based discussion. I mean, we could use that in every place in society. And at the same time, yeah, it does. I can just imagine how difficult it'd be for people to just stop, on the go all the time, like rushing from place to place. Like, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And I need to follow through with my agenda. It demands us to slow down and to really cultivate the capacity to be with everything that may be simmering underneath the surface. And that could mean looking at even ugly stuff, quote unquote, where we got to admit to ourselves that, oh, there is selfishness here. Oh, there is some fear of lack or fear of just not being respected. We have to confront maybe past times when that happened to us. Yeah. And now bring it to the table so that everyone else can understand where you're coming from and see where your perspective is. That just, imagine if everyone was so vulnerable, right? I think that's what maybe is keeping political leaders from doing this work. Yeah. The ones who are really busy defending their own resources, because they would have to confront all the selfishness that they've been hoarding, you know, that they're trying to hide by pretending to speak for the people.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's that's what I meant. I think, you know, a lot is at stake. It means doing this hard inner work of realizing that we have all of these negative emotions, these challenging emotions, and these kind of these desires that may not be very well looked upon in society. That there is a part of us, in all of us, who is afraid of not having enough, and that we might be called to do something immoral to make sure we get what we want and what we need.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. And amazing. We're just about done with this with our time together. I want to give each of you another 2 minutes each to introduce your work to those who are listening. Whatever part of your work you want to say, you can mention your website or anything like that, or any final remarks before we go. I'll give myself 1 minute, and then I'll give each of you 2 minutes here. I think most of you listening and watching probably know about me because I'm the one really promoting the podcast, but I do I call it authentic business or authentic marketing. So it's like taking it's like seeing the process of entrepreneurship as a stage for your own personal development and for your service to society. And it's like, if we can bring in that perspective, then business is much more meaningful. And then besides that, I teach all the specifics of, well, how do you run Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or things like that. And I just one more quick remark before I turn it over to the two of you. It's like recently I was voting, we have elections here. And I was like, I'm reading the candidate statements and they're like, oh, I'm a lawyer or I'm a teacher or whatever. It's like, oh, I graduated from this. I'm like, I want to hear I'm a 10-year meditation. I've been dedicated to self-regulation for the last 5 years. Like, that's what I want to see. Like, next time, please, anyone, government leaders, applying for elections, put that in so they start to normalize out of it. Anyway, so thank you, and I'll go to Winnie. I'll give you 2 minutes if you want to introduce your work. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, actually, I have a closing remark, which is humanity. Feel like, ultimately, what if we were all to take off our masks and just to be ourselves? Politicians, everyone, one and all. That's how we connect heart to heart, right? When we can really just be in our humanity with all of our faults, all of our glory, everything. So this is all about embracing all of ourselves. And that's what I see the theme of what we've been talking about today. And so that links actually into my work with my clients. So I help I'm British born Chinese accountant turned life coach. So I help Eastern Southeast Asian women to be the fullest expression of themselves. So one of my one of the things I teach them is take off your masks and be the real you. So overcoming any cultural, societal, parental expectations, really stepping into one's truth, being one's fullest radiance, and creating deep impact in their careers, their businesses, their lives, their personal lives, just from being the simplicity and the joy of being who they really, really are. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And through lots of different ways. So through NLP, through energy work, breath work, meditation, all kinds. So it's kind of mind, body, and spirit, very much a holistic coaching work that I do with my clients. Wonderful.
And I'll just have each of you just verbally say your website or how do people find you. So Winnie, how about you?
Yes, so my website is winniesher.com.
WINNIESHER.com.
Correct.
Just like that.
Yes.
And the links will be in the episode notes as well below. So, all right. And Annie, I'll give you 2 minutes to introduce yourself or say anything else.
Yes, I'm a certified EFT tapping master practitioner. I help mostly women build confidence, set boundaries, and enjoy healthy relationships. So I'm very much coming in with my history of codependent relationships and now helping people find their voice, speak up for their needs, and find their truth in all of that. So yes, I help people with a lot of different topics. EFT is known for, and it's proven for addictions and PTSD, trauma, cravings. I mean, all kinds of things. So people come to me for many, many different things, but most people who come to me are resonating with my own story of, sacrificing their needs and silencing themselves, and they're learning how to tune into their truths. And that all for me starts within the body, as we've been discussing, and then radiating out towards the world, starting in our personal relationships and then showing up fully in our lives. And, so that means for a lot of the women I work with, they're very creative. They're out there sharing their work with others, making good money from it. And me helping them find their voice means I get to help people through them too, to spread their uplifting message, whatever the gift or wisdom they have to share. So it's a blessing to do what I do. My website is hushyourmind.com.
Hushyourmind.com. Nice. Okay. Well, thank you both for being here, being willing to have this conversation. I hope this was interesting for all of you listening too. Thank you for being part of this. As usual, I would love your feedback on how these conversations are going, the format, how do you like it? We're still pretty early on in the podcast, so really open to making this more of a democracy than a dictatorship right now. But right now, I know there's few of you, not as many listening as in the future, but welcome future people, and feel free to give feedback as well below. As I mentioned, you could connect with Annie and Winnie in the links below. And I wish that this the kind of values and the kind of energy and presence we share today will make a positive difference to the next conversation you have about politics, or the next time you have to do something with politics. So thank you. Thanks all for listening, and thanks so much, Winnie and Annie, for being here. Bye for now.